Hey, guess what, you guys? We're actually living in a post-racial era. Yeah, the fuck right. I swear, I cannot stand, excuse me, for the next few minutes of swearing. I cannot fucking stand when people say shit like that. We living in a post-racial era. Give me a fucking break. If we living in a post-racial era, why do we still got people like Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and the fucking KKK running around this goddamn USA, huh? Please explain it to me, cause this shit intrigues me. Living in a post-racial era. Okay, fucking post-racial era. Okay. And why am I laughing about this? Because to me, that's the most fucking stupid thing I've ever heard. Well, it's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard, actually. Because it doesn't make any sense. Post-racial. Yeah, okay. And yet, you got people running around here who still hates black people and is still trying to find ways to hurt black people. Then you got people who are just have this irrational hatred towards Muslims and Mexicans and anybody who pretty much isn't white. So please explain to me how we're living in a post-racial era. I just love when people try to make it seem like, racism was like 50 years ago and that we're just so beyond racism now. Okay. Well, they could believe that all they want. I mean, personally, I've been wondering, like, what fucking planet are they living at? Because last time I checked, we still got people who just still hate somebody based on somebody's skin color or whatever. It doesn't even have to, it's not even like, we don't have to live in the Jim Crow era or any shit like that to still, face racism, and that's what people seem to forget. And what also intrigues me the most is that I love how white people, not all, but I love how some white people just love to defend, the things of the past, like the racist things of the past, and then they, like, try to, like, justify it by saying, oh, people didn't know better back then, and it wasn't their fault, they were just ignorant. I mean, fuck that shit, that's what I say. Fuck that shit. I don't fucking care. It's not the fact that those people didn't know any better. They knew better, they just didn't fucking care, that's the thing. And that's another thing I want to say is that, and then they want to, and then they know what else they want to say. They want to say, you can't, judge somebody of the past by today's standards. Fuck that shit. I'm gonna judge somebody regardless. I don't fucking care if it was 1800 and something. I don't fucking care. I really don't. Because to me, it's like, just because they didn't quote unquote know any better, that doesn't mean what they were doing was right. I mean, shit. I just love when, I remember like a few years ago, when people, like on YouTube, they had like these little racist cartoons. They had one that was like little black Sambo, and like, I was like, wow, this is really racist, why are they even showing this on YouTube? I mean, this shit should be off. And there was like all these, white people defending it and everything, saying, oh, that's no fair, they shouldn't take it off, it's something of the past, those people didn't know better back then. Fuck that shit, people knew better, they just didn't fucking care. And that's what people seem to forget. They weren't ignorant, they just didn't fucking care, and they knew better. They just didn't fucking care. But anyway, back to what I was saying about this post-racial era shit. I love when people say that. I especially love when some white people say that. Do they really think that we have come so far, from what, 1960 something? Or like, really? I think it's hilarious when people say that. Like, there's no racism in the United States, and that, white supremacy doesn't exist, and neither does white privilege. Yeah, right. I just love that. To me, that doesn't really make any sense, White people still control the U.S. I mean, don't even worry about Obama being president. I mean, because to me, it doesn't really make a difference. I love how some white people like was like, oh yeah, Obama is president now, and everything is gonna be different, and we're living in a post-racial era. Are you serious? Like, really? Just because Obama, you know, became president didn't really stop people from being racist. I mean, hell, if anything, like when Obama won, it just really did, pretty much prove how much people can't even like see past Obama's skin color. A lot of people couldn't. A lot of people, there were people in Idaho who were like betting on him to die and stuff like that, and you had people who were hanging nooses and stuff like that, and yet people want to say we're living a post-racial era. I mean, I really do wonder, like, what goes on in some white people's minds when they say things like that. I mean, it's silly. It's really silly, and I just can't help but just laugh about it because it's the most ignorant thing I've ever. It's like one of the most ignorant things I've ever heard. Post-racial. Please. It's not post-racial. I'm not, the only reason why they say it's post-racial is because it's not, like, we're not living in times like Jim Crow laws anymore, and we're not going around hanging people, like black people, and it has been in history, that they did hang Mexicans many years ago. I can't really recall, but I have read about that. But I'm just saying, like, you don't have to live in Jim Crow laws and stuff like that to still being in an era of racism, and it's still racism exists. It's just the difference is that it's just not. It's not as out there as it used to be. You still got racist people, especially if you go in New York. You'll find stubble racism. You got people who try to strive for this fake ass color blindness shit, and personally, I think that doesn't make any sense. Like not post, but color blindness, I think, is really dumb. I've actually had a conversation, like, I actually started a conversation once about that. Like, I think color blindness is just another way of saying, like, oh, racism isn't acceptable, so I'm just gonna see you as this, because to me, I think being colorblind is just kind of stupid. I mean, regardless, you're still seeing a person just by their color. I mean, I really don't understand why people would say I don't see you as a black person. Well, I mean, to me, because that doesn't make any sense. What the hell is that supposed to mean? You don't see me as a black person? I mean, it's kind of dumb. But to me, some person was like, isn't it better to be like colorblind than to make stereotypes of somebody? And it's like, based on their color. And I'm like, well, I guess, I mean, not really. It doesn't really make anything better. And if anything, that just shows that you're just being silly. With that whole colorblind thing, you're just doing it because it's just acceptable in the society, and you don't want to be judged if you try to, like, do something, like point out somebody who's black because you're afraid or some shit like that. I don't know. But I do think that when people try to use that colorblind excuse, it's just a cop-out, in my opinion. But anyway, my whole point is that this idea of living in a post-racial era, seriously, people, I mean, this is stupid. People really need to, like, stop thinking that we are living in an era like that, because we're not. And people need to, like, seriously go outside and actually just walk around the street, and you will encounter racism if you just actually just go around and just, that type of thing, instead of just being in your fucking house all day. Because I mean, like, I guess I can't really be mad, because the white people who usually say that, they're probably like the ones that live with other white people. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, this idea of being in a post-racial era, really, people really need to stop thinking that we are, because we're not. I mean, it's silly. If we're living in a post-racial era, besides people like Bill O'Reilly, the KKK, and Sean Hannity being around, why is it that there was a white guy who was stabbing several black men? Why was... you know, why did we have like this white guy that was going around stabbing black men, or why was it this white guy that lived in I think South Carolina, who shot a young black man and freaking dragged his body, you know, like tied his body onto a truck and dragged his body for several miles. You know, can you please explain me how that is equivalent to being in a post-racial era? Please explain it to me, because, you know, if anything, that just pretty much like debunks everything that, you know, it's been said about this whole living in a post-racial era. But anyway, you know, I just wanted to get that off my chest, because, you know, it really gets on my nerves when people, you know, believe that we really are living in that type of era. We're not. Racism is always going to be around no matter what. You know, we are trying to find ways to like stop it, but, you know, regardless, it's always going to be around. And besides, another thing I wanted to say before I get off is, like, you know, racism cannot just end like that, you know, because, you know, just end like that in less than 40 years. I mean, people need to realize, and I think people seem to forget, that even though black people were not in slavery, like, after, 1865, I mean, they were still pretty much slaves, technically. I mean, they had to follow certain rules. They ended up being sharecroppers, which is pretty much close to slavery anyway. And not only that, you know, they weren't even considered citizens. So that's what really just makes my head scratch. Like, people think that, you know, black people just need to get over it, and that slavery was such and such 100 years ago and that crap like that. But no. That's what people seem to forget. People seem to forget that being in Jim Crow laws was technically slavery. And people also seem to forget that black people didn't really become citizens of the United States, like officially citizens of the United States, until like the late 60s, early 70s, which, if you think about it, was like, what, less than 40 years ago? Come on, you can't be shitting me with all this shit about how we're living in a post-racial era, when black people didn't really become citizens of the United States until like less than 40 years ago, and yet they want black people to get over it. Right, okay. Alright. So, I just really had to say that, because that doesn't make any sense to me. But, I'm just about to get off right here, and that's all I have to say.